Welcome to Simmons Says, where I help emerging and struggling writers create intriguing plots and compelling characters to make their stories hard to put down and even harder to forget. A dangerous gang of thieves have pulled a big robbery. Someone you know and care about has been falsely accused and is hiding out. The only way to clear them is to find the real robbers. But the police are no help. And you're just part of a street gang. Group of kids with no chance in hell of getting this right. Hello there. I'm Alex Simmons, and welcome to another session of Simmons Says Mystery Mechanics, where I try to help you figure out what happens next in your story. And today, we are going to continue this probing and delving into the realm of mystery writing with this particular topic: how to select your sleuth. Now, mysteries. Just to be a little bit clear, I'm not talking about thrillers where you see a lot of action and things get thrown together and eventually the person who's done the bad thing gets caught. That's not what we're talking about. From the Latin word mysterium, assuming I pronounced that right, mystery means a hidden truth, a maze, a puzzle, something that's unknown, right? And that you must sort of metaphorically wander through until you find the pieces, the clues that lead to the reveal. All right. So to find the truth, you must have the right puzzle master. Right? In this case, a detective, a sleuth, someone who is going to delve into the problem and somehow, depending on who they are and how they operate, figure things out. Now, if, for instance, if the crime involves computers and the internet and that kind of thing, well, then you want someone who is familiar with or has a fairly decent understanding of that world or technology so that they can move more freely and effectively through that. Or maybe they have an assistant who's that good. If it's involving drugs or weapons smuggling or something like that, and it's maybe in a seaport, all right, then you want to have someone who understands that terrain and who has the mindset and a better understanding of how that whole world operates and the methods that are used by the people involved. For a third example, you have a sleepy town somewhere in New England or South Dakota or whatever, with neighbors who've known each other for 50, 60, 70 years or more. And everything has been sort of an average kind of life until this terrible thing happens. Then you want either someone, again, from that region who's familiar with all of that lifestyle, who knows the people and can talk to them in ways that get them to be forthcoming, even the ones who are trying to hide the secrets. Or you could throw in somebody who's totally unfamiliar with all of that and who stirs the pot. By the very nature of them being there, a stranger throws everybody off balance. And that person then weaves through the mystery. Again, whatever the crime is, that person needs to have some ability in pursuing the clues, finding them, and unraveling the mystery. So, to put it in the words of, if I got it right, Gilbert and Sullivan, maybe, who said, let the punishment fit the crime. In this case, let the sleuth or the detective fit the crime. Now, let's stick with the example that I outlined at the beginning of this, a robbery that's occurred by some notorious gang or some very effective gang. And a friend of the street kids, a friend of theirs has been falsely accused and is now hiding because the police are after him and maybe even some other people who they heard are after him because we don't know who was robbed, right? But in order for these street kids to figure this out, they need to be familiar with the territory that the crime occurred in or somehow have some connection to someone who is. So let's have this crime, it's going to take place because, again, street kids, we're going to assume that it takes place in an urban environment, wherever that may be, on the West Coast, East Coast, who knows, right? But it's an urban environment. And we can say if they're street kids or a street gang, then okay, maybe it's kids who hang out on the street. Doesn't necessarily mean they're thugs or criminals, but their lifestyle is we're out there doing whatever more often than we are in school or the library or at home, right? Now, they're not the Hardy Boys. They're not influenced by a father who's an ex-cop and now a very successful private detective. They're not detectives. They don't have access to police equipment and training. So that means whoever they are and whatever they do, it's got to come from their ornate abilities, things that they stumble across, and somehow picking up pieces here and there because they're working as a team, they begin to put the pieces together. So you want someone who's within the gang, someone who's clever at spotting things. You want someone else who's maybe got a gift of gab. You want someone else who maybe is friends or has a family member who is somehow connected with the robber or the robbery itself or the territory that it took place in so they can get some inside information. They need to be able to pull together bits and pieces of this mystery from these sort of organic sources so that using their own particular individual skills collectively, they can solve the crime and save their friend. So you need to understand how these kids think, what their personalities are, what their background is, what their motivations are, so that you can use them authentically and see how the pieces fit together. Now, I'll give you a couple of other examples outside of this particular scenario. So I think I mentioned at one point um, Jessica Fletcher in Murder, She Wrote, right? New England town, small town, very quaint and everything. But because she's a successful author, she winds up traveling all over the world, right? And everywhere she goes, somebody gets robbed or killed. Makes me suspicious of her, but that's not the point. The point is that because she is this persona of this very nice, sweet woman from Maine who wouldn't harm a fly and only writes mystery stories, how much of a threat can she be to criminals? But she's sharp and she's attentive and she notices details and she listens to people and she's able to get people to talk. And using her particular skill sets, she always winds up getting somebody locked up and usually the right person. Another twist on that would be Sam McLeod from an old TV series called McLeod, where he's a marshal from Taos, Mexico, New Mexico rather, and he's brought to New York City to function as a detective temporarily to learn their methodologies. Well, yeah, okay, he's going to learn from them, but because of his habits and his nature and what he's used to doing out in the West, here he's in New York, where theoretically that shouldn't work for him. It does. His attitude, his way of talking to people, the way he thinks is different than a lot of the police detectives he's working with. So he sees the crimes from a different angle, or he gets introduced to people and he's able to get them to talk or come clean or make a mistake in ways that they wouldn't have been as vulnerable or as cooperative with a regular New York City police officer. And then, of course, you have fun because he gets to ride a horse. Somehow, they always manage to get him riding a horse in this thing. Yes, Jessica Fletcher, Sam McLeod, the way the stories are written, fictional, they work. But then that's what we're doing too. We're doing fiction. And if you want something a little bit more modern, I'm trying to remember the name of the TV series, High Potential, right? With the lead character is Morgan Gilroy or Guillory, Gillory, right? And she's a single mom with three kids, and she was working as a night cleaner, you know, like a office maintenance person at the police precinct. And she comes across an evidence board and she spots something and she does work on it during the night while she's there. The next day, the police find it. It's been messed with. They're all upset. They find out she did it because of the video. They talk to her and they're going to chastise her, you know, yell at her and everything. And she tells them, yeah, well, I did it because I spotted this mistake and this mistake and this mistake. And they go, wait, how can you do that? And she reveals not out of a brag, just as a matter of fact, she has an IQ of 160. She has high intelligence. She has a phenomenal memory, and she can spot details and process that information at hyperspeed. And that's part of how she can spot things that they don't. And slowly but surely, she becomes an advisor or a consultant for the police, right? Now, this is a current series that's on right now. So you can see that again, you can have your police, they can be people in wheelchairs, they can have, badges and guns and all that. They can be the assistant to a British detective who's brilliant and everything, and they bring a whole new slant to it because they're also medically trained. You can have any number of twists and turns and interesting quirks to your characters. All of these have their own particular uniqueness, and that's how they work to solve their mystery. They're able because of how they function, because the writer fits the detective to the crime. Okay? The method for that detective works in that situation. And so you need to be clear what it is your detective is good at, how they work, and then you develop how they find the clues within your story that allow them to solve the crime. Okay, that's it for today. Yes, I know there's a lot going on there. And if for some reason you need help trying to figure out how to do that for your particular story, well, you know how to reach me. I'm right here. Email me away, DM me, send help, send up smoke signals, show up with a siren blaring, and I'll do everything I can to help you. All right? Until then, see you next time on Simmons Says Mystery Mechanics. Take care.